Hello and welcome back to Indus News with me, Usman Lone. Well, we begin this hour with our top story, and that's Kashmir, where over 50 countries have called for the immediate lifting of the ongoing curfew and release of those arrested inside Indian-occupied Kashmir. In a joint statement at the UN Human Rights Council, they expressed deep concern over New Delhi's action in the occupied valley. They condemned reports of widespread torture, extrajudicial killings, sexual abuse and enforced disappearances. The members also called for an immediate halt to the use of force, especially pellet guns. The statement called for an immediate end to India's communications blackout inside the valley. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi called this statement Pakistan's biggest success at the UN Human Rights Council. Qureshi said New Delhi's occupation of Kashmir contravenes the Geneva Convention. He said the UN Council should act on these joint demands. India is planning another false flag operation to divert the world's attention from human rights abuses in occupied Kashmir since it stripped the region of its autonomy on August the 5th. The international community has criticized New Delhi's move to annex the disputed territory. Modi's right-wing BJP government has suffered many diplomatic setbacks since then. More in this report.
Occupied Kashmir has become the world's biggest prison. 8 million people are besieged by almost 900,000 Indian troops. A lockdown imposed 38 days ago has resulted in a severe shortage of food and medicine in the occupied valley. The world has condemned India's high-handedness and asked New Delhi to lift the curfew. Instead of paying heed to this advice, India accused Pakistan of infiltrating the disputed region of Sir Creek. Talking to Indus News, Pakistan's former Foreign Secretary Salman Bashir said the world is not ready to buy India's narrative any longer.
We are seeing desperate Indian efforts to divert attention back to their favorite narrative of terrorism. I think India has lost it totally. Nobody in the world is now prepared to buy this line that they have projected for the last 30 years, that Kashmir is about terrorism. It is, about 1 million troops in forceful occupation, doing all sorts of things which are brutal.
Speaking during a special transmission, former Lieutenant General Ghulam Mustafa said India has a long history of false flag operations following baseless allegations.
When India gets cornered, they're always dangerous in that false flag operation that you see in Bombay or Srinagar or elsewhere, like the one where the assembly when it's attacked. So there is a possibility that something like that could happen elsewhere in India and Pakistan gets blamed. Now, hitherto, Pakistan has always carried the blame because the world generally sided with India. But now I think India will have a very tough time because there is no reason for Pakistan to do anything of this kind right now.
After illegally annexing the disputed territory, India thought its communications blackout will ensure minimum global backlash. But growing anger and concern from across the world and all forums of the UN has put New Delhi on the defensive. UK-based security analyst David Lau said if India has nothing to hide in occupied Kashmir, then it should allow the UN access to the occupied region.
Now we're going to see the true colours of this current government in India to see how they are a democracy, how democratic they are. Because then if there are issues, and they claim that there's nothing to hide, they're saying, most people in the area are quite safe. Well, you show the world then. You let UN inspectors go in and have a look. And as you said, lift this communications blackout.
Over 50 countries at the UN's Human Rights Council told India to stop the use of force in the occupied valley and respect Kashmiri's right to self-determination. Diplomatically cornered and bashed by international media, New Delhi is now desperate to divert the world's attention from occupied Kashmir.
Well, Indian occupying forces have killed a youth in Sopore town of occupied Kashmir. The youth was travelling in a car when Indian troops opened fire on the vehicle, killing him on the spot. Earlier, Indian troops arrested at least 8 more young people during house raids in the same town. Occupied Kashmir has been under a curfew with a communications blackout for 38 days now. Meanwhile, Islamabad has called for strengthening of the role of the UN military observers inside India and Pakistan. Pakistan's ambassador to the UN, Dr. Maliha Lodi, said the efficiency of observer groups have become more consequential after India's ceasefire violations. Now in Syria, airstrikes have resumed in the northwestern part of the country, where Russia brokered a ceasefire only last month. War monitors say Russian airstrikes have killed one person already inside Idlib. This is the last major rebel stronghold in Syria after 8 years of war. War monitors say over 500 people have been killed by shelling in the area and airstrikes carried out by the government and its allies since late last year. Iran says it will retreat further from its commitments to the 2015 nuclear deal if necessary. In Tehran, President Hassan Rouhani said the US should end its policy of pressurizing Iran. Addressing his cabinet, Rouhani asked the US to abandon the policies of warmongers. He said Iran has never started a war or violated its commitments. Meanwhile, Iran's ambassador to the IAEA, Kazem Garibabadi, accused the US and Israel of plotting against its nuclear program. The US and Israel have accused Iran of possible undeclared nuclear activities. Last week, Tehran took a third step away from the deal by reactivating its nuclear centrifuges. The Chief of Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces is visiting China to discuss bilateral defense cooperation between the two countries. Major General Mohammad Bakiri and his Chinese counterpart Li Zuocheng will discuss regional developments. During his stay, Bakiri will hold meetings with high-ranking Chinese military officials. The Iranian commander will also discuss the establishment of a joint Iran-China military commission. Heading a high-profile military delegation, he will also visit Chinese industrial centers, and Iran and China have signed an agreement in 2016 to enhance defense cooperation between the both countries. Now, staying with Iran, it says the oil cargo of a tanker released by Gibraltar has been sold at sea to a private company. Britain accuses Iran of selling the oil to Syria from the Adrian Darya 1, which it seized at Gibraltar in July. In a tweet, Iran's envoy to London, Hamid Badinejad, said Tehran hasn't violated any obligations. In a meeting with the British Foreign Secretary, Badinejad said Britain's action against the tanker violated international law. He says European Union sanctions cannot be extended to third-party countries. The ambassador says the owner of the oil will decide its destination. Saudi Arabia has called an emergency meeting of the OIC foreign ministers to discuss Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's latest threat to annex major parts of Palestine. The kingdom has asked international bodies to reject Netanyahu's latest idea for the occupied West Bank. The Saudi royal court said in a statement the Israeli move is against the UN Charter and international law. The kingdom called the annexation bid groundless and legally invalid. Earlier, the Arab League condemned Tel Aviv's move. In a statement, the bloc's foreign ministers called it an act of aggression, undermining any chances of a peace settlement. Palestine's President Mahmoud Abbas says his country will end all agreements with Israel if any such plan goes ahead. Iran's Foreign Ministry, Javad Zarif, has also condemned Netanyahu's statement. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has urged British Prime Minister Boris Johnson to recall Parliament. Earlier, a Scottish court ordered Johnson's decision to suspend Parliament unlawful. Sturgeon says Johnson has shown a disregard for constitutional rules and norms. The Supreme Court will hear a government appeal against the ruling next week in London.
We have a court saying that the prorogation of Parliament is unlawful and is null and void, to use the court's own language. That means, in my view, Parliament should be recalled immediately, and I would call on the Prime Minister to do the right thing, bring Parliament back from its unlawful prorogation and allow that essential work of scrutiny to continue.
Now, Russia has confirmed an alleged US spy infiltrated the Kremlin's ranks and worked in Moscow's presidential administration. But Moscow rejected US media reports claiming the CIA spy had access to President Vladimir Putin himself. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov says the person was a low-level official who was fired several years ago. He was also dismissed claims that the spy was extracted in 2017 over safety concerns. US media has claimed the spy's proximity to Putin made him one of the CIA's most valuable Russian assets. The European Union has urged Russia and Ukraine to reach a deal on a transnational gas transit in next week's talks. Energy Commissioner Maros Sefcovic says EU will take part in the talks with an open mind. Sefcovic said the bloc will be looking at all alternatives to secure long-term transport of gas through Ukraine. He says a positive outcome to the talks will preserve Russia's image as a reliable supplier and Ukraine as a reliable transit country. The current gas transit between Kiev and Moscow will expire in January next year.
We are coming to these talks with an open mind because we want to find the solution, and I understand that these talks have support of both leaders in Russia and Ukraine, and it would be our task to push the discussion as far as possible to create the most conducive environment for the positive outcome, and we are really looking at all alternatives.
Well, we'll be back with more news and stories from around the world after this short break. Hello and welcome back to Indus News. Now, Venezuelan armed forces carried out drills along the Colombian border amid rising tensions between the two countries. Operational Commander Remigio Ceballos said the military is preparing to intercept any foreign invasion. Tensions began rising after the US suggested it would support Colombian border forces earlier this year. President Nicolas Maduro ordered the army to deploy along the 2,200-kilometer border. 150,000 troops were mobilized to carry out security exercises over several weeks. Tanks and missile carriers were also deployed around the La Fria airport in western Chatira. Maduro said he was placing his forces on high alert, expecting a military conflict with Colombia. Colombia's right-wing President Ivan Duque has accused Maduro of sheltering FARC dissidents on his territory. Canada has decided to beef up its military presence in the Arctic. This follows Russia's recent move to do the same. In a policy document, Ottawa unveiled a 10-year strategic plan for the resource-rich Arctic region. The Arctic has petroleum deposits and wood and is a major maritime shortcut between Europe and Asia. A new post created by incoming European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen has drawn widespread condemnation. She's rebranded the former Migration, Home Affairs and Citizenship portfolio into the Office for Protecting Our European Way of Life. The European Commission has been accused of adopting far-right rhetoric after the post was announced. The new title also garnered criticism from within Brussels itself for its perceived fascist-sounding name. MEPs criticised the post for sending a worrying message by linking migration with security. Von der Leyen defended the job title, saying it has been part of her political guidelines since July. She's assigned the controversially named office to Greece's Margaritis Shinas. Germany says it will do its part to avoid a proxy war in Libya. Chancellor Angela Merkel has warned the situation in Libya could destabilize the whole of Africa. In a wide-ranging speech to the lower house of parliament, Merkel compared the situation in Libya to Syria, promising to contain the brewing conflict. She said European signatories will continue efforts to salvage the nuclear deal with Iran, and she expressed hope for an orderly Brexit, saying Berlin is also prepared for a no deal. She also called out on the US-China trade dispute for disrupting Berlin's exports. Amid the weakening economy, she conceded tax revenues could come in lower than expected. South Sudanese President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar have agreed to form a transitional government by November 12th. Information Minister Michael Makui says the parties met at the State House on Monday evening to discuss details of the agreement. Over in Sudan, the ruling Sovereign Council announced it's closer to reaching a comprehensive peace deal with South Sudanese armed groups. In a statement, the Council said the two parties at the talks in Juba have agreed on most of the outstanding issues. ASEAN economic ministers from China, Japan and South Korea say they will boost regional multilateral trade. They say they will uphold the international trading system and reduce the impact of the global economic slowdown and recent trade war. At the meeting in Bangkok, they also promised closer regional economic integration. They expressed concern over the impact of increased trade tensions on the global economy. Thailand's Deputy Prime Minister Jurin Lasanawisit said the meeting is helping drive the regional economy forwards. He said they've agreed to promote trade and investment amid uncertainty inside the global economy. Now, in other news, an exhibition titled Pursuing Happiness for the People, 70 Years of Human Rights Progress, has opened in Geneva. It highlights China's achievements in promoting human rights over the last 7 decades. More in this report.
China has come a long way in pursuing a regimen that ensures happiness of its people. The progress made in the last 7 decades has been remarkable, and an exhibition in Geneva, Switzerland, titled Pursuing Happiness for the People, 70 Years of Human Rights Progress in New China, commemorates. It features over 120 pictures and 20 videos. Nearly 300 people, including diplomats, attended the opening ceremony.
We appreciate very much the achievements reached by China, by the Chinese government in the area of respecting human rights in all areas, in economic, cultural, social, and many others. I think that during these 70 years, China made a very step forward in promoting human rights.
Chinese officials said that they have always put people's interests above all else. Officials vowed to further promote human rights and make contributions to the international cause of human rights.
China will achieve a higher level of comprehensive development and make greater contribution to the development of global human rights and human civilization diversity.
China's progress has won high praise from many visitors and admirers all around the world.
The United States has pledged to offer a temporary refuge to hurricane victims from the Bahamas. Washington's statement comes after hundreds of Bahamians were refused entry to the U.S. because they didn't have visas. U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Mark Morgan says the U.S. will offer temporary visa status to hurricane victims. Authorities in the Bahamas have updated the death toll to 50 as thousands were evacuated from the islands.
Jeopardy, you're in the Bahamas and you want to get to the United States, you're going to be allowed to come to the United States, right? Whether you have travel documents or not.
Now, Americans are commemorating the 18th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks in New York. Over 3,000 people were killed when hijacked airliners crashed into the World Trade Center. The Pentagon and a field in Pennsylvania, thousands of people will gather to remember the dead and the attack. Victims' relatives will gather at Ground Zero to pay homage and raise awareness about terrorism. US President Donald Trump is scheduled to join today's ceremony. In New York City, a service will be held at the 9/11 Memorial. Mourners will gather for the annual reading of victims' names. In memory of the event, people around the country will also volunteer at food banks, schools and home building projects. In Pakistan, the death anniversary of the country's founder, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, is being observed today. People from all walks of life visited the mausoleum of Pakistan's founder on his 71st death anniversary. Various events are being organized to highlight his leadership and relentless struggle for the creation of Pakistan. In their messages, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan and President Arif Alvi have paid tribute to Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founder of Pakistan. Now, cattle and livestock farms are one of the planet's biggest environmental burdens. In fact, humanity's current food systems are responsible for a third of worldwide emissions. Vegans and vegetarians say their lifestyles are the solution to the problem. But is a meat-free diet right for everyone? More in this report.
A cursory glance at global food statistics makes it clear we have to change how we eat. According to a July 2019 UN report, 820 million people worldwide are suffering from hunger. On the other hand, the World Health Organization warns that 2 billion people are obese or overweight. Those in the developed world are also eating far too much meat, driving up greenhouse emissions.
Well, I'm vegan, and that's also one of the reasons why I come to this kind of shop. For most foods here, the carbon footprint is pretty low. There's no meat, they don't sell any at the moment either, so I'd rather support a business like this.
But doctors say a diet without animal protein isn't for everyone.
A diet which is good for the planet isn't necessarily good for your body. So I think we have to be very careful. If you want to give up animal protein, you have to be sure you're compensating for it with vegetable protein.
Meat isn't the only reason our nutrition systems have to change. The actual reason is how we perceive, purchase and eat food. 25 to 30% of food produced globally is wasted. Plus, many won't adopt a vegetarian lifestyle due to social and cultural reasons.
Socially, it's tricky. I know a vegetarian who became vegan, then switched back because of that, and the other reason is cultural. I come from Lyon, where food is considered very important and is far from being vegan.
Time to change our eating habits is running out fast. Soil erosion due to current farming practices, climate change and biodiversity loss will all affect food production worldwide. With the global population set to rise to 11 billion by the end of the century, this could spell disaster.
Now, environmentally friendly car concepts have stolen the limelight at the Frankfurt Motor Show. Car makers have been sharing their concepts for a better, brighter and greener future. More in this report.
Car makers from around the globe have met in the German city of Frankfurt to show off their latest ideas. These include a large number of plug-in hybrids and an array of fully electric concepts. The contributors insist on the need for infrastructure and the market sustainability of alternatively fueled vehicles. Auto giants say the future will be made by eco-friendly vehicles.
The future is electric, and the Audi e-tron is for us, and already for a lot of delighted customers, an electrifying beginning. By 2025, we will have launched 30 electric models, 20 of them fully electric.
BMW chief Oliver Zipse says his company aims to follow global agreements made on climate change.
What concerns the next generation most is climate change. Therefore, it also concerns us at the BMW Group. That's why we are clearly committed to the Paris Agreement and the United Nations Global Compact already since 2001.
Manufacturers are struggling to deal with consumers' demands for high-power engines while exploring alternative fuel vehicles.
Now, most people enjoy yoga because it helps them relax and focus better on their daily tasks. But in the Swedish capital, Stockholm, a new trend has taken over the city as people practice mindfulness with goats. More in this report.
In Stockholm, a class now offers residents a chance to take part in goat yoga. People can practice their positions in a park while the animals wander around them and relax at their feet. The class was set up by Marlene Tyron-Backen, who first heard of goat yoga when visiting family in New York. She started classes in the summer of 2018 in Lindigo, where she keeps several dozen goats.
I think just being out in the nature, and the goat themselves, they are so sweet, and they are, you know, when they finish eating, they can come and lay beside you, they climb on you, and they yeah, they just themselves make you calm.
Up to 20 or so people attend the classes. Sessions are held in a paddock and continue during the winter. So far, people have really enjoyed their sessions, out in the open, surrounded by nature.
It was my neighbor who sent me a small advertisement from Facebook that they were searching for yoga teachers. And I thought, goat yoga, that is sounds so great. So I just answered immediately, yes, I want to be with this.
This trend was started in the US by Lainey Moss and is sought by people all over the world.
Well, goat yoga may be popular in Sweden, but I doubt it'll be very popular in Pakistan. Now, an original Tintin comic strip by Hergé, produced in 1942, is expected to sell for up to 400,000 euros at auction in Paris next week. More in this report.
Tintin and his creator, Hergé, the pen name of Belgian cartoonist Georges Remy, have been controversial over the years. The first few Tintin stories were seen by some as a simplistic, prejudiced, at times even racist view of the world. An artwork comprised of 3 strips from the comic, The Mysterious Star, will go on sale at the Piazza auction house in the French capital.
I knew that it was something very emotional for people who love it and are passionate. There's a generation of people who grew up with it and who discovered the real Hergé with his level of art, because it's really drawing, it's something original, and it's a piece of their childhood that they'll be buying.
The work, drawn in Chinese ink, was the first design in a new format, allowing Tintin's comics to be printed on thinner sheets because of a wartime paper shortage. Tintin has already broken world record sales for a comic. A page from the 1954 book Explorers on the Moon fetched €1.5 million at auction in 2016.
Since the studio's Hergé and the Hergé Museum have a large number of strips but not all of them, we can't exclude the possibility that one day an extraordinary strip which no one has seen or identified won't appear on the market. It's still something that could happen.
At a Paris auction in 2017, an original drawing from the 1939 King Ottokar's scepters sold for over €500,000, and 194's The Shooting Star sold for €381,000 respectively.
Well, I'll be back with more news from business and sports after this short break. Now, in business news, China has exempted 16 US products from additional tariffs. The Chinese Finance Ministry says the exemption of US products from tariffs will take effect on 17th of September, and it will be valid for 1 year. It says the government wants to ease the negative impact of the trade war and benefit companies in both countries. Pharmaceutical companies and lubricants are among the exclusions to import levies. Trade negotiators from both countries are scheduled to meet in Washington early next month. Now, fans of Apple's iPhone have revealed its latest iPhone 11, which comes with new cameras, an improved screen, a faster processor, and most importantly, a longer battery life. The new smartphone series carries on where the iPhone X series left off last year. Apple said it's paired the new phone's 3 cameras for color and exposure, pushing the iPhone as a filmmaking system. iPhone sales have declined for the past 2 fiscal quarters. Well, it's 37 degrees here in Lahore, but let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's all from me and the team here in Lahore. I'll be back at the top of the hour with the headlines. Bye-bye.